Hey, we're back once again, Dr. Z. Who do we have with us today?
We have the lovely and multi-talented Dotty Posto. Posto, correct?
Posto.
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 Posto. Sorry.
I should have said that before we got online.
So Dotty is a life coach, a leadership coach, and you say you're a change management and of team. Your focus is on teams. So you want to tell our listeners more about you and how you got into that particular niche of coaching?
Sure. Yeah, I focus primarily on leadership coaching and then team development and, like you said, change management. And how I got into that, a couple things that happened throughout my career. I always joke around, my husband and I used to joke around that early on in my career, I got a lot of does not play well with others on my report card in the corporate world. and not understanding why and not really getting much support. And I was one of my managers, who I will be forever grateful to, Gina Baxter, really saw something in me and really went to bat for me with leadership to allow me to go to the Center for Creative Learning or the Center for Creative Leadership in Colorado for their leadership development program. And that program, when I came out of it, I mean, it was a week-long program. It was expensive. It was a very cool program. And I knew that I needed some way to have like reminders of everything I'd learned and to be able to implement everything I'd learned long-term. So I asked for a coach from the organization that I worked for at the time. And from that point, which was about 1997-ish, about 1997, I have probably always had a coach. I've almost always had a coach since then, because I saw what a true impact it made on my life personally and on my own career and my leadership. And so working for places like Hewitt Associates, Harley Davidson, I worked as a manager of change management. I worked in their organizational development department. And especially when I was working as an organizational development manager at Harley, there were so many things that I learned about myself and about when I was coaching some of the leaders, both mid-level managers and senior managers, and seeing some of the lights go on and just seeing the shifts and helping them to understand themselves better, understand their teams better, and be able to truly lead versus just managing your people. Sure.
So that said, how did that transition come about from? So for anybody, all of you that are out there watching and listening that are aspiring to be coaches, this is a great opportunity to get a peek behind that curtain from someone who will, in a minute or two, tell us exactly how she managed to go from, okay, I've decided to leave the corporate world, I'm going to strike out on my own and become a coach. So take us through that part of the journey, if you would.
Sure. So during the economic downturn of 2008, 2009, I actually got laid off from Harley Davidson. They cut back significantly on their staffing. Yeah. And so during that time, I literally, as my manager was reading her letter, from HR that she had to share with me, my brain I literally thought to myself, this is an opportunity, Dotty. This is an opportunity. And I thought about going into business for myself. And all of the people I talked to said, Dotty, no one is hiring organizational development consultants. No one's hiring consultants. You'll be lucky to get another job in OD. So just try to get a job. And so that's what I did. My husband was laid off as well. And so he was laid off for about 13 months. And it ended up I was laid off for about 11 months. And somebody contacted me about a project. And I actually got into doing some consulting in the area of organizational change management. And so I worked doing organizational change management and I took the project right away. I was like, I've been off for 11 months. We need money. it was a rough
Yeah.
year. We were on food stamps. We had people sponsor us as a
Wow.
family at Christmas time. It was a
Wow.
challenging situation. I borrowed money from my father. It was a challenging
Yeah.
situation, but we got through it. And so I focused on the organizational change management for a while, and I did have coaching clients throughout that time. So from 2010, January of 2010, I started working on some different projects. I had a couple of different organizational change management projects and some really big, long ones. I mean, I had one client for almost 8 years where I helped on a project that implemented new systems across all of the US and all across Canada. And I've really narrowed my focus, and I'm really focusing on the leadership and team development and the change management from a little bit different perspective. In the past, I'd done a lot of projects where I was the consultant kind of executing all the work, which is all fine and good. I'm very skilled at it. I've been doing change management work since, the mid 90s. However, what I'm seeing is the need to really coach organizations on their own, have their own people get skilled up in that area. And so that's one area of my business. And then the other area is the leadership development. I think there's a couple of areas where leaders are they're managing and they're not leading. They're not really taking the opportunity to truly lead their teams. There are leaders out there who are doing, amazing things with their teams. And I don't think organizations always have the best, they put people in leadership roles and there's not always the resources to get them really skilled in how to lead versus how to manage, or how to lead versus executing the work that they were used to when they were, in a more technical or an execution role.
Yeah, you hit on a really good point there, that if you can identify a void in any industry, and if you're highly skilled at it, which you are, then you have a chance. But I believe it's very important that you also have the passion to be in that space to go along with it, because having the passion and the love for doing something that you would do it for free goes a long way and will carry you through tougher times.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that, do I love it enough that I would do it for free? I have bills to pay. I mean,
right.
I have coached people for free. I have coached people for free. And I mean, yes, I do love it. I do have a passion for it. I think helping people both in their leadership, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And so that's why I often say I'm a leadership and life coach, because what we do in our personal life impacts what we do at work, and what we do at work impacts our personal, life at home. So there's always an integration in between how I manage and lead and, execute things at home versus how I manage, lead, and execute things in the workplace.
Absolutely. It's all connected. What I meant by that, I say this to many young people that I meet people all the time because I'm very outgoing. I work at it. I do it intentionally. And when I do meet somebody that I think can use this tip, I say, well, if you haven't, do you know what you want to do? No, I have no clue. I say, well, here's a tip. What would you do do you love it so much that you would do it for free? Now, I'm not advocating to go out and, like you said, we got to pay bills and all that kind of stuff. But that's just the analogy. And then that turns the light on for people to go, oh, yeah, and how do I monetize that? So we're hitting on some really good points here.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, too, because, you said you go from being in the team where you're constantly being called the one who doesn't play well with others in the sandbox. And so how did you transform that to now being a coach for teams?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. That is a great question. And one of the things that I work with leaders and teams on is aligning to your core gifts and talents. And that was one of the things that I realized, through some of the learning opportunities that I had. I will tell you that people tried to train it out of me, and that didn't necessarily work. And what I realized, you know, and I'm going to use Myers-Briggs. I don't usually train Myers-Briggs, but I use some of the tools that I learned. I went through a training program with Linda Behrens and Inner Strength Associates, which was amazing. It was learning how to do a self-discovery process to learn your interaction style, your temperament, which essentially gets you your Myers-Briggs. And she didn't use the assessment. She had us take the assessment, but she wouldn't show it to us. And now she doesn't use it at all because it's not right so many times. And what happened was when I took Myers-Briggs early in my career, I was a project manager. I was a business analyst, a project manager, and early in my career. And when I took the Myers-Briggs, I came out as ESTJ. ESTJ, ESTJ, ESTJ. I took it like 2 or 3 times over the years. Then when I went through this self-discovery process, I realized I was the exact opposite. I'm an INFP. I am an INFP. And it took them, you know, it took a lot of questions and a lot of inquiry and a lot of, you know, reflection and really going in terms of, you know, who am I at my core? Like going back to like, what were you like as a child? And
right.
What happens is we have who we are at our core. Okay. We are born into this world with core gifts and talents. Then we have our developed self.
Right.
If you think of like concentric rings, our developed self may be skills that we develop consciously or habits that we develop unconsciously that keep us safe, that, you know, keep us fed, that keep us heard, that get us, you know, attention, all of these things when we're a child, all of these things that, and even in our teen years, what is it, those pieces of our developed self that sometimes we don't even realize are part of us. They're like water to a fish. We don't even recognize them. And what happened to me is that work as a project manager was not aligned to who I am at my core. Like my core gifts and talents and project management. And what happens is that developed self, if you're not aligned to that course, to your core self, then what you're if the things you're doing aren't aligned, they take way more energy. Okay. And that, you know, when you're doing those things as a career over and over and over, and they're taking all that energy and you don't realize it, like I never thought that it was sapping my energy, but that's why I was getting the does not play well with others. I was short with people. I was aggressive. I was impatient. I was, you know, whatever it was. And granted, there were probably some other things as well that I softened and learned along the way. But a lot of it was this misalignment of what I was doing with who I was. And so that's what I try to help people with, is really looking at what are your core talents, what are your core gifts, and is what you're doing today really aligned to those? And if not, like I had one woman, I did a workshop on gifts and talents versus skills, and she said, I know what I'm doing is not aligned to who I am. I know it. But she said, I'm not going to change jobs. She says, I know it. And so she had the capacity. She said, everything I do outside of work supports my core being. And so she knows she's got to do volunteer work or whatever and do these things outside of work to energize and to get herself into a space where she can do all of that and does not play well with others, you know, and be able to energize herself through it. So she's got to prepare herself going in and prepare herself, you know, have those activities or things on the back end that help her. And I have to say, I want to say this, add this in, because when I found out, one of the things I found out when I was going through that program, it took the woman who owned the program, she looked at me and she finally said, Dotty, you can be a social introvert. Because when people meet me, they think I'm an extrovert. I am very social. I love meeting people. I was at a conference a few weeks ago. I met so many people. It was so wonderful. And as soon as I got home, I collapsed. I had recommended when I was on, like when I first got in my car driving home, and I'm like, hey, I said to my husband and my daughter, I texted them, I'm like, let's go out to dinner tonight. And then when I got home, I'm like, we're ordering in. I cannot move. I just I had to lay out. I mean, I literally had to lay out flat. I had to get horizontal and just, they didn't get home for like 45 minutes, which was perfect. I had some time to myself. Like, oh my gosh, please don't come over. So.
Yeah. That's why I love the bank cracking your code. I don't know if I think you've done that.
I think you did.
I did it.
But
I did it.
I really love it because I think out of all of these, the DISC, the Myers-Briggs, and all these different things, as you were talking about being out of alignment, in alignment, there's that, but there's also, so there's with it, what really created a lot of awareness for me around it was with the bank cracking your code. Step number one is know thyself. You get to learn, you get to figure out, what are my values? What attributes do I really have? And there's a couple, sometimes you'll find a pleasant surprise or two in there. Like, I never realized until I really started working with this that I'm pretty innovative. I'm pretty creative, and I never even knew it, right?
Yeah.
So the other part about it is that there's this combination of, in my opinion, attributes and values. Zelda talks about values all the time. And I think some of the things that are in there are, they say, well, on the cards, they say, these are your values. I'm like, no, some of these are things like you said, Dotty. These are things that we are born with. They're just part of us. Like stability blueprint, for example, is stability, structure, system, planning, processes, predictability, responsibility. I think maybe some people are just more naturally responsible than other people, right?
Yeah.
But I think the point I want to make to you, let me finish. The point I want to make to you is that you're talking about personal alignment. You may have been out of alignment because just by talking to you, it sounds like you're higher action because you're like, I was being short with people. And if I'm a knowledge person, which I am, and I'm a long, you're short and I'm long, we're out of alignment. So that's the beauty of the program, is to get the awareness of the program and figure out how to, and figure out yourself. Secondly, figure out the other people. Here's the cards. Tell me your code so that I can see how you're different from me, so that I can figure out how to relate to you. That is so powerful.
Her nurturing was first.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Nurturing action.
Okay. See, I was close though, because I didn't know your code, and I thought action was probably first from what you described in like 10 words, and it turned out to be second. So I was close.
Yeah. And Dotty, I was going
to say, and they're very similar. If you talk about values. Yeah. Keep going. What were you going to say, Zelda?
Oh no, that's what I was going to say, is that I saw that on your website that you talked about values, and so I thought that's really powerful that you mentioned that, how important it is to then allow those to kind of drive your decision making. So I think that's really powerful. But yeah, if you want to share more on that, or what you were going to say before.
No, that's all I was going to say. Is I see that they're, how those characteristics align in bank is very similar to Myers-Briggs, to DISC. They really are kind of very similar, even to Personality Plus, by Florence Littauer. They're so similar, and they are born in. For example, like somebody was telling me their infant son, you've got kind of the example of their infant son had all of his little cars, and every night he would line them up under his pillow. They'd all be organized and lined up under his pillow, versus the child who gets in the playpen and within minutes, there's nothing left in the playpen. It's chaos. There is stuff everywhere. It's just a very different, you can see those personality points, those characteristics, those traits, those attributes from very young on. And so often either a parent, an unassuming parent, or a teacher can teach it out of us. You take the class clown or the imp who's, and they get, they're beaten down. They might be beaten down, like that's not valued. And so that gets crushed inside of them, and they sometimes never rediscover it. You know, where I had a woman who I coached when I was at Harley who was working for someone who wanted everyone to have their desk race shop clean. Like your desk had to be, and I don't know if you know what that means, but in a racing shop, everything has its place and everything's in its place. So that when the car comes in, you can very quickly, you know, where to get a tool to be able to very quickly change out whatever you need. And so he wanted everything race shop clean. And, you know, she could support that. When we did her Myers-Briggs, we did the self-discovery process. I don't even remember what her letters were, but she really found out that she had been like this impish child, this explorer. She loved to sneak out the back door and go exploring and do all of the, you know, climb trees and just explore the neighborhood. And she had lost touch with that part of herself. I said, you know, you can be race shop clean, just know how much energy that takes and what you need to do coming into work or what you need to do coming out of work to be able to support that part of you that is really at your core. You know, I said, you don't have to leave your job necessarily. You just have to know what is feeding you and draining you. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. There's a little delay. Sorry.
Yeah, I had like an emergency room physician, and she knew. No, she was a gynecologist, but she knew how to handle any kind of gynecologic emergency that there was, because she had those like SOPs, the standard operating procedure. If you come in with this, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And if you come in with this, I'm going to do this. But when it came to her diet, with her eating, she just tossed that out the window. And I was like, no, organization, that's your friend. These processes, those are your friends. So I was like, you need to bring them back. But I think you're right. There was that part, that spontaneous, that freedom, that action qualities, which were being suppressed. And so when it came to the diet, that's where she allowed herself some of that freedom. And so I said, maybe how can you maybe rein that in, but still allow some degree of freedom in that, so that it's not oppressive.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever coached someone who then totally took like a totally different direction? Like they're like, whoa, where did that come from? Like you freed them up so much to where they're like, I'm leaving this job. I'm going to go and travel and
fly, butterfly, fly.
In Tahiti or in Fiji. And
actually, it's wild because that has happened. One woman I coached, she ended up leaving. I mean, she took early retirement and left early. She moved out of the city she was living in because she was miserable there. It was too hot. She moved, she bought a camper, she travels all over the country. And she just, you know, every time I see her, she's just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, she was just in such an oppressive role for so long that just didn't, you know, wasn't aligned. She was out of alignment. She was, you know, and she was out of alignment both with what she was doing in her career and where she was living. You know, she was living close to her daughter. She'd been divorced and she was living close to her daughter, which is what she wanted. And she was miserable because of the environment. It was just too hot of a location for her. And she was miserable all the time. So she moved where she can still see her daughter, you know, a couple hours away, where it's, you know, a much more temperate climate, and she's so happy.
Yeah. So take us now into, all right, I've left the corporate world. Kickstart. Tell us about the kickstart of your business and how long you've been doing it, and some of the I don't want to ask too many questions at once here, but just take us, let's work on that part first. All right, I'm leaving corporate. I'm going to be a coach.
Well, and I didn't start out to be a coach. That's not, my thought was I was going to be an organizational development consultant. And in a sense, I was. When you think about what organizational development is as a whole, organizational change management is a part of organizational development. And so the change management work that I did, again, I had a few projects, I always say, fell in my lap. People found me on LinkedIn, called me and said, hey, are you open for a project? And that's how I got the first couple of projects that I did. And then I had a friend who worked for the same company. We worked for the same company at different times. And said she had called and said, hey, I've got a project that I can't do back at, this was Hewitt Associates, or it was Aon Hewitt at the time. She said, can you do it? And I said, absolutely. Or like one time I had a gentleman that I worked with at Harley who had a situation at one of the divisions within GE. He was the HR manager and he was working with the CEO. And so I worked with the CEO and their leadership team doing leadership development for them. Powerful work. It was amazing, powerful work with them. But it was, somebody I knew who had called and said, hey, we're looking to do the same thing that we did together at Harley. We need that help here at this division of GE. So, and then as I've expanded, like I've gone through a couple different coaching programs, and that have really been powerful in helping me to have, expanded, because I learned a lot at Harley when I was in organizational change management and in organizational development. I've got a lot of tools and a lot of resources and a lot of ways of working with people. And then I added a couple different coaching programs in there. One of them I got just recently because someone had introduced me to a coach and I signed up for her business because one of the things I hadn't really had to do was market my business, because most of it was people had reached out to me, or I had done some work and I reached back out to that person and I knew they had another big project they were working on. So that was super easy. Now I'm in a space where I have to learn to really, truly market my business. That's something I haven't really had to do much. And that's what, if you're even thinking about leaving corporate, I would start before you ever leave of becoming, what do you want to be a thought leader about, and become that thought leader. And depending on who you're looking to serve, that's where you want to go. So I'm serving mostly, small to mid-sized companies, or like a department within a big company. Like I work on that division within GE. I probably wouldn't normally work with GE CEO and their direct reports, but I worked with that CEO because it was a smaller group. It was a smaller department or a division. Really think about, if you're going to work with corporate clients, then get on LinkedIn and start becoming the thought leader on LinkedIn. If all you can do is post once a week every week, and start thinking about what is that thought leadership that you want to share with the world. If you're doing consumer, if you're doing B2C, business to consumer, and you're going to become a coach where you're coaching individuals, then maybe Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. I am not on TikTok, so don't ask me anything about TikTok. That's one that I am not going to venture into. And the only reason I do Instagram now is because I can put things in buffer to schedule it out, and it schedules it out to both of them. So makes it easy.
It's called building a business for a reason.
But
clearly,
it's interesting as you talk about that with individuals. I can imagine, maybe is that even taken from your building of teams? Because like what was involved? Was it is teamwork kind of also making sure that you're putting the right people in the right position, or maybe finding their strengths? And then
absolutely, that is a key part of leadership. And whether that's something that you need to do, and oftentimes you do it in partnership with human resources, but you should not be delegating that to human resources. That is not human resources job. That is the leader's job. And while I don't necessarily, there's a lot of, different opinions about Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, I really agree that you have to make sure you have the right butts in the right seats, because oftentimes people that are maybe not fully engaged in their work or causing problems on the team, there are a lot of times where it's because they are not what they're doing isn't in alignment, and they're too afraid to say they can't do it or they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Or, for example, just a simple thing. Because of like my core strengths and what I know and what I can do, I know that working with spreadsheets and all, if we have a whole huge detailed spreadsheet and links between sheets and links between spreadsheets, and that takes me focus and energy. I mean, it really drains my energy. I can't stand it. I don't like doing it. I avoid it. I was on a project where I had to do a lot of that. And I'm like, you guys, I will do this. If you can't find anybody else, I will do this. But no, I'm going to have to block time, and you guys are going to have to leave me alone for a couple of hours. Like, it's going to take me probably longer to do than someone else. So work is going to take people longer. As a leader, you need to understand and make sure you have the right butts in the right seats, and that you're looking at don't just say, oh, you're pretty good at this, let's develop that skill. Just because it's a skill does not mean it's aligned and it's a core talent. And if you keep developing that skill, you could be inadvertently developing disengagement, does not play well with others, whatever, all sorts of challenging behaviors, because it's sapping their energy and they just don't even realize it. So many people don't even realize what's sapping their energy.
Yeah, but that's interesting, going into entrepreneurship and having your own business, because initially you're having to kind of do everything. But, maybe that is wise to, even at the initial phase, start thinking about team members, or even developing those partnerships with others who have different strengths than you have. Yeah. And many people don't even think about that. I'm just going to start my business. And then, if they realize how much is involved, it's like, ooh. And then they feel bad if they can't do it all,
Lots of opportunities to help people with these types of issues, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And, in the beginning, oftentimes you do have to do everything, and it isn't comfortable. Yeah. You're going to, can I swear on your podcast? Is it okay? Or
Most
no?
people
Would you
don't, but if you feel the need.
All right, I won't.
I suppose.
If you'd rather I don't, I won't.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. We block out. No, this isn't for children, so you're clear for takeoff.
If you're in business and there's tasks that you're doing that make you feel like ass, is how my coach says it. If you feel like ass, that's normal. That's going to happen. You have to get comfortable feeling like ass, because it's discomfort. You have to get comfortable with discomfort and just do it anyway. Right. It's not going to be comfortable. Everything you need to do to grow your business is not going to be comfortable. And you have to be willing to do that stuff until you can pay someone else to do it. Because most people don't have the business, don't have like huge growth right away where they can hire the people to do those things. And besides, the thing that it does in doing it by yourself, doing it yourself for a bit, is you learn what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. Right. You document it. And Erin may talk about this. She talks a lot about process and how she used to hate process. She thought process equaled following the rules, which it doesn't. It's very different. But then you can actually, when you hire someone, you can actually train and teach them, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. And then let them bring whatever skills and talent, whatever talents they have to enhance that. But at least you have a core set of, here's what we have to do, and here's how we're doing it now. And like another coach I know says is, all you have to do is Google it. Google is your best friend when you're starting your business. Is how do I use, and I'm paying for certain tools to make things easier. Like I use Buffer. It's a way to schedule out my social media posts, so I don't have to be posting on my own every day. I still am developing the habit to get everything in buffer every week and plan all that out, but it's still, use the tools that can help that way. There is a tool, like if you can afford it, there's a nice one, especially for like coaches and consultants, called Cultivating Sales. Shame, I'm not using it yet, but it's, it's an integrated tool. If you can find one of those like Zoho or Zoho's got a lot of different pieces, though. To me, that one was a little challenging, but if you can use a tool where it's all integrated, great, because otherwise you're kind of piecing things together and duct taping things together. But I'm doing it and it's working. I use Kajabi for my emails and for my landing pages, and I find it challenging. And for the longest time, I was like, I hate Kajabi. I can't wait to get off Kajabi, And finally, I just started Googling stuff like, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? And, there's YouTube videos for everything.
That's true.
I'm with you. I just recently embraced the whole, how do I do this? And I'm like, dude, you've been telling you how to do stuff on Google for years. What the heck? But I wanted to back up a second. You mentioned it, and I want to hammer that point home to the people out there that the biggest reason, especially for solopreneur businesses like coaching and any business where you're wearing 10 different hats, 5, whatever it is, the people that fail most frequently are the ones that just cannot handle transcending uncomfortable things that need to be done. That is probably the number one thing that people have to get past. Yeah. If you could start off and say, do you believe firmly that you can do anything and the worst job in the world you will tackle in order to make your business successful? If they answer yes to that, they're like, well, I don't know. So just keep working that, because you're probably not an entrepreneur, right? So take us along the path now. Marketing, it sounds like, is the next thing. So you're like, the low-hanging fruit is kind of dried up a little bit. I was getting some organic referral stuff. But if I really want to take my business, if I want to, what's that term they say, scale up? If you really want to scale up, you're going to have to learn marketing. So take us down that. Give us a little insight into it.
Yeah, so I've used a couple different programs to help me. Like, I enrolled in a program and probably did it a little earlier than I was ready for, because I was still working essentially full-time on a project. Even though I was a consultant, I was full-time on a project, and I signed up for this program. And so I didn't invest the time initially. Here's one piece of advice. If you're going to sign up for a program, sign up for only one at a time and do everything they tell you. That's, baseline advice.
Right.
And so I've had a couple different programs, and a lot of the things are, a lot of the same. What do you do? Who do you do it for? And where are those people? And what are the outcomes that you provide? And I'm actually working with Erin. So it's, we talked about, I've hired coaches on my own personal, it helped me through personal things, as well as I've hired business coaches. The program that I'm in, after my coaching program that I just went through, the last certification that I got, she has a program, and she helps people who are either, whether they're business owners or coaches or just people wanting to improve their life. She's got a monthly program. And so I make sure that I leverage those resources. I get a free 40-minute call every week. I take that free 40-minute call every week. And sometimes it's like, what should I ask? What should I, but I am, I make sure that I'm working on me. I work on, and I really like what are the things that are going to make money? What are the lead generation? What are the money making activities? And really force myself to do those, and, set aside all the stuff that is buffering, as my coach would call it, going to the pantry.
Those are called the IGAs, the income generating activities.
Yeah. And sometimes those are the hardest ones to do.
Exactly.
You recognize that this requires it, but they are uncomfortable. So what are some of your core beliefs maybe that either had to change or that you had to integrate to really tell yourself you could be successful at this?
Good question.
Yeah.
I think one of them that's had to change very early when my husband and I got married. He owned a service station, and he got into it. I think he was 23 years old when he first bought in. I mean, he bought into the business, so he was a business owner at 23 years old, and within a few years, he realized this business, we need to do A, B, and C in order for this business to grow. It's just going to it's not going to go where it needs to. And the guy he had bought into a partnership with, it was his longtime family business. And so he wanted to make zero changes. And so my husband was like, okay, then let's dissolve the partnership. I'm leaving. And when we did that right after we got married. They dissolved the partnership, and they were ready to close on the business, and they wanted ground samples. So challenge number one, right after we got married, was there was a ton of ground contamination. And then we got a bill in the mail that said we owed $70,000 to the state of Wisconsin. And so we had huge financial challenges between the cleanup, and then when he left the partnership, his partner stopped paying all the bills. And so we kept getting because it had been a partnership, my husband kept getting bills for all of these things. And so one of the things, when you ask like what belief I've had to shift, and it's something I work on all the time, is that we're not good with money. It's actually something that my dad, I remember one time I put on a pair of bib overalls, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this. I found a $10 bill. And my dad was really angry with me. He's like, you are not managing your money. You do not, if you find $10 that you didn't know you had, then you're not managing your money well. And so, just that, like, I don't manage money well. And so those are those that I have some money beliefs that I am working through, that I am a good money manager. I am a good steward of my money. All these things that I'm working on because of some things that I've let get in the way, and those are just, because our thoughts create our feelings. And if I'm thinking I'm not a good money manager and I'm going to feel like crap, then I'm going to do things that reinforce not being a good money manager. So I have to shift my belief that, I have to shift that belief in order. And that's been a work in progress over time. So that's one that I'm shifting. And I guess one belief that has helped me, is I just really believe that everyone has an inner wisdom, and that they know what they need. They know how to improve their lives. However, we've got so many layers of disbelief, of bad, of the way we've been brought up, that they often need someone to help peel back those layers. And so just really, I really truly believe that I actually very much believe that all of us can use a coach, that everybody could use a coach, and, I really want to help improve. I've had so many friends who are like, oh my gosh, work is so horrible. It's, I hate my manager. And I'm like, why? It shouldn't have to be this way. It shouldn't have to be this way.
But we don't have eyes in the back of our head.
Wow. We could go on and on and on with this. We're getting down here to the final minutes. One thing that one of the two final things that you talked about brought up in my mind, what we think about comes about, people, is one of the most powerful things. We should be writing it down. It should be on the mirror in the bathroom or whatever, because what you just said 5 minutes ago about I am not good with money, and my thoughts go to my thoughts lead to my feelings, and I feel like crap about it. Not only do you feel like crap about it, but you're reinforcing that you're no good at it. And that is not what you want to be doing. But you circled it back around and said, yes, I need to create those affirmations. And people, that's what if you're out there doing the similar thing, she just gave a perfect example of what you need to be doing to make changes now, today, on your own.
Well, I was going to say that if you feel like crap, imagine what type of decisions you're going to make based on that. Probably going to make some crap decisions.
Exactly, because
you're going to be sitting in it.
Yeah.
You'll be sitting in it and wondering how you got there.
Wallowing. You're not going to be sitting in it. You're going to be wallowing in it.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times.
All right, we got to wind it down. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say,
You got to wind it down.
Oftentimes people will say our thoughts create our results. But you know, that's true, but there's two other pieces in between. Our thoughts create our feelings create our actions create our results. And so if we don't back up and look at our thoughts and our feelings.
That's a deep topic. Maybe we'll have you back to talk about that.
I know we never have enough time.
I know. So with that said, how can people get a hold of you?
So I think I sent you a couple of things. I have a website, In Plain Sight Inc. In Plain, Plain, Sight, Sight Inc. InPlainSightInc.com, or just Dotty at InPlainSightInc.com. That's my email. So, one last plug for your listeners is that I am hosting a women's retreat in October. So email me. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Instagram at In Plain Sight Inc. or LinkedIn, Dotty Posto. So,
yeah, great. So give us the deets on that one, and we'll put all your links and things in the show notes.
Yep.
And that's gonna about do it. And as always, thank you in advance.
Just thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing, yeah. Just thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing, yeah. Yeah, we're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing, yeah. We're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing, yeah.